Good afternoon, and thank you everyone for joining us on today's What the Tech webinar. Is Microsoft Teams phone system right for your organization? Definitely you're in for a great treat today. We have a lot of information to go through. I know you're all going to be excited. If you have any questions, please feel free to insert your questions into the chat box, and we will get to those and address those all at the end. So without further ado, I'm going to have Matthew Toth and Joe Mauk introduce themselves and kick off the webinar.
All right, hello everybody. My name is Matthew Toth. I'm the founder of C3 Technology Advisors. We are a 12-year-old IT consulting firm based in the Midwest, and we're doing a lot of projects on UCaaS and Teams these days, and that leads me to Joe. So Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Joe Mauk, and here at C3, I handle our contact center, our unified communications, and our SD-WAN disciplines from an engineering perspective. I've been here about a year and a half, and prior to that, I was a network and voice engineer at a private company for about 13 years.
All right, before we dive into Teams, just want to give everyone out there a little bit information about us. So these are the disciplines that we really focus on today. Today we're going to be focusing on the bottom left-hand corner, that UCaaS product set. But we also work in the disciplines of DR and infrastructure as a service, co-location, cybersecurity, SD-WAN, contact center, and telecommunications. We're essentially here to help our customers make really informed, good decisions about vendors, technologies, price points, even assisting contract negotiations and implementations. So we are not sales folks. We are really trying to enable your organization, again, to make those good decisions without having to talk to every Tom, Dick, and Harry sales guy out there. So Joe, throw it over to you.
Perfect. Thank you, Matthew. So let's just dive right into this, and we'll get off with a definition of what UCaaS is. So basically that is a cloud-hosted PBX with collaborative applications and services that are delivered over a third-party IP network. And this basically eliminates quite a few things for you guys, specifically on-site hardware. You're probably doubling this hardware for disaster recovery, maybe in a DR facility. Maintenance contracts for software and hardware can go away. Expensive VAR contracts, vendor value-added resellers that help support your PBX, that can go away. Large capital expenditures, you no longer have to pony up the money for a PBX all up front. All these guys are MRC based or monthly reoccurring. So you really are able to forecast what your company is going to spend on a monthly basis going forward. And then lastly, there's no longer a need for a highly trained staff to be on site to support this system. So if you have highly trained engineers, put them to use looking for something that will move your company forward in the next 12 to 18 months. And while eliminating certain things, it also adds quite a few things, right? So being able to provide a uniform telephony experience regardless of user location. So you think about your PBX sitting at headquarters, and maybe you've got remote users across the country. Or do they have the same experience that the guys at headquarters have, or not? So now that this is a hosted solution, everyone has the same experience. Redundancy to mitigate costly outages. So now really the only concern you have is that internet connection out to this vendor. So this is where an SD-WAN solution can really help aggregate two circuits and load balance across that bandwidth to get you out to that vendor. And then lastly, being able to spin up facilities in days, if not hours, right? So you're no longer waiting for circuits to be installed. You can essentially move employees into a new facility, maybe with a mobile hotspot, and using a desktop application for that dialing capability. So that really is a huge benefit to one of these platforms.
And I got a few comments on that too, Joe. You mentioned spinning up facilities in hours, in days, let alone hours. We had a client that got hit by an earthquake in Utah maybe about 6 or so weeks ago, and there was damage to the facility. their data center room went down, phone system capabilities went down. So we spent the next 7 hours spinning up a cloud-based instance of one of our UCaaS providers so that they could continue to take calls from customers. This was really important. They really just could not be down, and they couldn't go through the process of procuring new telco lines and procuring equipment and shipping it on site and configuring it. A couple other things I see here as well is, this is one of the ultimate work from home tools. I mean, you have the UCaaS tools you have at the office work the exact same way they do at home. So this is one of those things I think is really going to take off even more with the advent of work from home. Last item too is, just that single portal. Not today you have Pure Eyes, you have POTS, and you have these phone systems, and you have all these capabilities over here, and none of these things are managed in one central place. Well, with UCaaS, you're able to do that. So you're managing your entire telephony network, across the country, potentially across the globe in one place. So that's a really nice tool to have. And I think that's where IT is going. You want to have less places to have to manage your network.
Yeah, absolutely. And, just going back to that company that was affected by the earthquake, they have since started to roll out the UCaaS solution to multiple other facilities that weren't affected by the earthquake because they quickly saw the value in having a hosted solution. So we'll take a quick look at a market overview. Gartner says by 2021, 90% of all IT leaders will not purchase an on-prem unified communications platform. And that's because the future cloud UC offerings will be far ahead in terms of features, functions, portals, analytics, and dashboards. So when you look at that, that leaves 10% of people that are looking at an on-premise solution. Do you really think Cisco and Avaya are going to spend a large amount of their capital to make these platforms better? I think what this really signals is that the death of on-prem PBX is swift. It's at least on life support. You can ask Nortel, Toshiba, and ShoreTel how they survived, and honestly, Avaya and Cisco could be next.
And I'll throw a quick note in there as well. You take someone like Avaya who has 100 million phones on desks throughout the world, and to give you an idea of how difficult it is to create a UCaaS platform, they ultimately incorporated RingCentral's product to be their UCaaS product for the future, even though they have got 10, 15,000 employees today. So that was something that was really telling, the fact that they didn't build that internally and went out to the market and just essentially became, to a certain extent, a reseller of another provider.
Yeah, and that really leads into the third bullet point. You see voice companies are leading with cloud offerings. So you look at Avaya, and as you mentioned, they partnered with RingCentral. That is the platform they're leading with. Cisco bought BroadSoft. That is the platform they're leading with. I'm guessing they're not out there actively trying to sell their on-premise PBX anymore. And then lastly, another quote by Gartner, 40% of new telephony will be O365 or G Suite by 2023. I do find this interesting, and I wonder what Gartner expects that market share will be between Microsoft and Google, if it's going to be even or if it will be split more towards Teams or Google Voice. Google's seen as a cheaper yet adequate solution. And I wonder if they're going to continue to innovate and take more of that market share. And I also wonder, as far as the top 10 to 12 proprietary UCaaS vendors out there, will they continue to become more feature rich and pull customers towards their solution as well? So we'll take a quick look at Microsoft Voice progression. You go back to 2007, we had Microsoft Communicator. And then 3 years later, it was Lync. 5 years later, Skype. A couple years later, we have Teams. So now you're looking at 2020, and Teams is still where it's at now today, maybe lacking some of the features and functionality that you would see in some other platforms. I want you to look at the very end there. July 31st, 2021 is coming up on us, and that is Microsoft's official end of support for Skype for Business. We do have some partners that have their own Skype for Business instance and are able to support that platform until 2025. But either way, if you're looking to make a migration to Teams, you want to start looking at doing that today. One thing I just want to ask you is if you feel like Teams is not as far along as where it should have been after 4 years, where do you feel like it will be in the next 4 years? And that's really what we're waiting to see as time goes along and how Teams progresses. So let's look at some of the Teams features. Microsoft Teams has the ability to really pull together a workforce. When you tie in OneNote and the capability of using SharePoint to store files, the collaboration capabilities of Teams, it's a very nice platform for what it is. Something I wanted to point out is before COVID-19, there were about 20 million users on Teams daily. Now we're up to about 44 million. So it is a heavily used platform. And even at C3, we use it internally for quick video calls, note sharing, and document repositories. I am present. So it's a great platform for that. And if you're using Teams already internally because of your licensing, then adding the voice license might make it easy for your employees to adopt, and training could be minimalized. And lastly, if you are looking at Teams having that E5 license, if you have that for some other reason, whether it's device management, mobile or analytics, or compliance features, then adding that voice license is a relatively cheap cost. Up on the screen, you can see some of the Teams features that are listed here. Call queues, call parking, voicemail to email, and voicemail transcription are pretty standard these days. So a quick look at voice pricing. There's a few components to this. Obviously you're going to have your O365 license. We're going to focus on E3 and E5 today. So E3 is about $20 and that'll meet most users' needs. E5 is listed at $35. And again, we do understand this is list and there's some discounts that can be had here. But that's your base. That's going to get you started. And then for component 2, you need to add on that additional $8 per user to get that dial pad within Teams, right? So it is included in E5 and it's an additional $8 within E3. I do want to add also that Office Premium and Office Essentials, so those non-EA organizations out there now do have the capability of adding the voice license. So that is something that's very new to Microsoft. Component number 3 is you have to have a calling plan. Microsoft has calling plans in 11 countries. So domestic only is 3,000 minutes for $12 a month. Those minutes are pooled. They do count towards inbound and outbound. So for instance, if you have 10 users at 3,000 minutes, that's 30,000 minutes per month. It does not count to your 30,000 minutes or 3,000 minutes of users does not count towards Teams to Teams calls. And Microsoft bills by the minute, so just keep that in mind. Component number 4, hold on, excuse me. Component number 4 is conferencing. So that's the audio conferencing portion. If you're even doing a 3-way call, 3 people on one call, Microsoft considers that a conference call. So you would need to add that $4 per user audio conferencing license. While Microsoft has that in 98 countries, 25 of those countries require the $4 license as well as pay by the minute pricing. So another note is, as of right now, you can see up to 4 users in video in Teams. That's soon going to be 9, and they're saying by the end of July, you'll be able to see up to 24 video participants at one time. And then lastly is the toll-free communications credits. These credits must be purchased upfront. And not only are they for your toll-free inbound calls, but they can also apply towards your calling plan. So going back to that earlier example where you had 30,000 minutes for 10 users, if you were to run out of minutes, you could use these communication credits to make sure that your phone system continued to work. Keep in mind, there is an auto recharge option. So make sure that if you are going to purchase communication credits, you do select that. Otherwise, your telephony system will stop working. And then lastly, any credits that are not used within a 12-month period are forfeited. So just keep that in mind as well.
And Joe, everyone at an organization has to have a calling plan because, like a lot of organizations, 3,000 minutes per user is obviously well beyond what most, most organizations use. But you can't just buy, 2 or 3 calling plans for 20 or 30 people, right?
That's right. That's right. Everyone has to have a calling plan. You bet.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Yep. So we're going to look at just a quick rundown of what the pricing is. Again, E3 and E5 are what we're focusing on today. E3, you add the $8 license. E5, it's included. You add the $12 calling plan. You add the $4 audio conferencing, and that gets you to about $44 for an E3 and $47 for an E5. There's some reasons why Microsoft may not be a good fit. They do have limited handset support, so limited desk phones that are supported. They lack APIs for contact center and CRM integrations. And we talk about this with customers on a daily basis. Whether you're looking at a new phone system 10 years ago or now, the objectives were the same, right? You wanted better features, you want it to be more robust and more resilient at a lower cost. So the integrations into these platforms may make your team more efficient and really should be a decision factor, key decision factor when selecting a new partner. A couple other things, the attendant console is currently being worked on for a receptionist. There's no faxing. There's no traditional voice knock, so when you call in for voice support, you're talking to the same person that might support you on Exchange or Excel. So that's something that you definitely want to keep in consideration. Limited global reach. I mentioned this earlier, 11 countries are supported with Microsoft's dial plan. So if you're outside of those 11 countries, you have to come up with another solution.
And that's where those direct routing partners come into play. But we're dealing with a lot of international organizations today that go far beyond. Those 11 countries that are supported today are the the big ones. Australia, UK, France, it's Canada, etc. So I know we're kind of skipping ahead here, but you essentially have to use a direct routing partner if you're outside of those countries, if you want to use Teams, correct?
Yeah, we're going to go into those in a couple slides here, but yeah, you would need a direct routing partner, or you could bring your own circuit. But yes, you would have to go outside of what Microsoft offers for many countries that you might be in.
Thanks, Joe.
Yep, a couple other things to keep in mind. If you want somebody to manage or co-manage your solution, Microsoft will not do that. And Microsoft, as of right now, does not support PSTN failover. So while it's a planned capability for this quarter, it still should raise a concern about the fact that it's just being released versus being vetted out for a year or two. So continuing on, Microsoft's SLA is 99.9, so 3 nines. That's only enforced when using an Ethernet connection and a Microsoft approved handset. So let's do the math on this. 99.9 versus 99.999, 3 nines versus 5 nines. That's the difference between 9 hours of downtime versus 5 minutes of downtime per year. So go to your business leaders and ask, are you okay with 9 hours of downtime, or would you prefer 5 minutes? I think it's a very telling statistic that is often overlooked. Another thing to think about is putting your communication tools in one basket. So, if you were working February 3rd, you came in the morning and you were unable to log into Teams. Now, if you're only using Teams for instant messaging and presence, maybe the effect of this was not so bad. But if you're adding voice to this, you've lost more of your communication capabilities. So just keep that in mind that this outage could have been grossly. Let me back up. So putting all your communication tools in one basket, keep this in mind as well. If you came into work on February 3rd, Microsoft Teams was down and you were unable to log in. if you're using it for just instant messaging and presence, the effect was not so bad, but adding voice to it, the effects could have been significantly greater. So, while Microsoft partners would have had the same issue, they had the capability of redirecting calls to an alternate number, which could help alleviate some of the effects of the outage, while not maybe providing a robust DR capability. So we think there's a better way. Using a Microsoft Direct Routing partner like some of the vendors we have on here, they allow you to continue to use Teams, and you can buy a dial plan from them, or you can introduce a SIP trunk into your Teams environment. Using a SIP trunk allows you to pay for call paths versus dial plans, and we'll get into that as well. Not all of these vendors are limited to providing just dial plans or SIP. They also have the benefit of charging by the second versus the minute. They can manage porting the numbers for you. That can be a nightmare trying to port your numbers to Microsoft. They're not going to assist you on that, and the losing carrier can be very sticky about wanting to let go of those numbers. They also allow you to avoid calling Microsoft for support. So now you can call one of these vendors here and get a much better experience if you do need that tier 1, tier 2 support. And again, they can really provide that redundancy and essentially fill some gaps where Microsoft Teams falls short. So again, bridging the gap, these guys here that we talked about in this last slide, they have the capability of providing the security certifications like SOX or HIPAA or PCI. So if you're taking credit card data or you're passing important customer information, maybe you need that HIPAA compliancy. Secondly, single number reach. This is something that we find very important. Being able to SMS, MMS, voice call, eFax all to one number is a great feature when you think about maybe communicating with your customers or having employee turnover. If your business now owns that single number that all of your customers are reaching your employees on, you can control that number. So it's a great solution. It's a great feature to have and often overlooked. Overhead paging through the phones. Microsoft Teams does not support analog lines, so overhead paging, you would need a workaround for that. Intercoms, ring down. Ring down is the capability of picking up a handset and having it automatically call another extension. IVR routing, so advanced IVR routing is not part of Microsoft Teams. And that's where one of these partners can really help. And a few others, the alternate numbers, user call recording, and CRM integrations, they definitely can help you with as well. And lastly, I want to point out that all of these gaps do not include contact center solutions. So if you do need a contact center solution, that's still a third-party application that you'll need to bring in-house. So how does a certified direct routing partner work, right? So now you can continue to have an SBC on site, which can feed that PSTN into your legacy PBX. It can also feed voice into your Teams environment. You can have your SBC virtualized in maybe a co-located data center. And lastly, you can host that SBC in the certified partner network. Now it's their responsibility to manage and support. And we really feel like this is the best of both worlds here. Now you're just using an internet circuit to get to that SBC to terminate that PSTN connectivity. So looking at the cost of a dial plan with a direct routing partner, the top two lines are identical, $8 and $4. But the interesting part is that PSTN access on line 3. So where Microsoft charges you $12 per user, what the partners can do is, again, bringing in that SIP trunk, they're going to give you a 1-to-4, 1-to-5 ratio of call paths. So if you have 100 users, they're going to give you 20 to 25 call paths, knowing that not everybody's going to be on the phone at the same time. And that greatly reduces the cost to about $4 a user. And this really is just one example of one of the vendors that we showed you on a couple slides ago. And there's definitely some different ways of doing it, but you can see where the cost savings is here.
And I think it's worthy of jumping for a quick moment to make sure everyone understands too that when a direct routing partner is used, it doesn't change the end user experience. So this is really using a different kind of motor oil, but they're still using Teams, they're still using that dialer. It's really just kind of some of the inside guts that are changed and change out with one of these direct routing partners. So just want to jump in there for a quick moment.
Yep, good point. Thank you, Matthew. Yeah, so line 4, SBC rental, if you do have an SBC, they do charge you for that. So, here it's 50 cents per user. And so that brings your total monthly cost to $24 through Microsoft and $16.50 for a partner. And if you extrapolate that down to 100 users, you can see the difference there. And then going to a yearly savings per 100 users, you're about $9,000. A couple things to keep in mind. Partners will allow you to store extra DIDs, whereas Microsoft will not allow you to do that. So there could be an added cost for that, but at least you keep those DIDs. And then again, I mentioned it earlier, these partners will charge by the second versus by the minute to go towards those minutes that you might purchase through a dial plan.
That's actually a quick, interesting point I wanted to make. There's so many organizations out there that, bought DIDs in blocks of 100 and 200, and they're sitting on those for new employees to come by. And, giving those up and going to Teams might not be something that folks want to do. And doesn't make sense to buy a plan just to reserve a DID. So this is a much less expensive way to hold on to that block of DIDs that you want your organization to hold on to that you've had for 10 or 20 years.
Absolutely. I mean, we see it all the time where companies hold on to DIDs, they hold on to toll-free numbers. Those are the numbers that your customers are used to calling you on. And at a minimal cost, why not keep those numbers? So that is definitely a glaring hole for Microsoft there. So there's some alternatives to Microsoft Teams or using Microsoft Teams with a certified partner. These are proprietary UCaaS vendors. There's a lot of them on here, but there are a heck of a lot more than what we're showing today. But what we wanted to show you is that they're not all the same. They have all different user interfaces. Some are feature rich with every option available included. Some are a la carte that allow you to pick and choose what you want. But they all come with collaboration tools, whether it's GoToMeeting or Zoom or their own proprietary platform, you have that built into the licensing platform as well. And if you look over to the right, whether it's SMS eFax, integrations into CRM, ERP, the global reach of some of these companies, some of them have built-in contact center. So now you can have your UC and your contact center on one platform. And all of these guys are working towards Microsoft integration. So eventually, going back to Matthew's point earlier and using a different motor oil, you could use these platforms to inject that dial tone into Teams and have that Teams experience, but using one of these vendors on the back end. So let's look at some reasons why you'd want to evaluate a Teams alternative. Price is almost always going to be better than Microsoft Teams through Microsoft. And that really is going to be most people's number one concern. If you're a global company and you need international, then some of these vendors have the capability of providing pure PSTN access in multiple countries, well beyond what Microsoft is capable of offering. And again, it still allows you to use Teams for what you're using it for. IM and presence, file sharing, internal video calls, you can still use Teams that way, very simplistically. But all of these platforms are feature rich, and they're a single platform to manage your voice, fax, text, your analog devices. And because this is all they do, they really do have a laser focused roadmap. They're spending all of their R&D money on really moving their platform forward for the next 2 years, 18 months to 2 years. And you're going to get better support working with these guys. This is all they do is unified communication. So when you do call in for support, they understand their platform and really can help you out and maybe get that support or that solution on that first call. Lastly, I want to go into ease of use. So we do have some demonstrations that we have lined up for you. and I'm gonna hop into those real quick. So first I want to show you is Ring Central and the capabilities they have for looking at your MOS scores, or how the quality of your phone calls. So this is C3's live environment. And if I were to take a look at this call here, I now have the capability of seeing a MOS score on each side. So you can see this call had a 4.2 on each side. But what's kind of cool about it is you can see the client IP, you can see where they're calling from. This call, Ryan was on Wi-Fi and he's using Comcast cable. On the other side, we see a desktop endpoint, and you can see what the codec was. You can see the jitter, the packet loss. This is very important if you've got somebody coming to you and saying, hey, I had a bad call. Can you take a look and tell me why? This really gives you a lot of detail, even down to he's using a soft phone and what revision that soft phone is. So we think this is a great solution, or a great tool that is built into this solution. A few more things that are built into here as well is, Ring Central comes with a collaboration platform, so doing that audio video call. And now you have the capability of really making sure that that tool is being used, who's using it. You can go into specific meetings and look at live meetings versus past meetings. And then drilling down into past meetings, you can see who called, what time did they join, what time did they leave, what their IP address was, where they're calling from. So this information is right here at your fingertips, and very easy for you to use. I want to jump over to 8x8, which is another great UCaaS platform, and they do something very unique. When you need to grab a new DID, which you could for many reasons, whether it's you've got a sales rep that's managing a new location, or you've got a new employee coming in and you want to grab a new DID, it's probably the most simplistic that I've seen on 8x8. So you just log in to your portal, go to phone numbers, you want to claim new phone number. From here, I can choose by number, state, rate center. So let's choose a state, and I'll scroll down here to Michigan. Click search. Now you can see I've got 100 results, and I can select all of them, or I can select just one. And I do want to point out, this is not just for the United States. This is for every country they're supported in. So you really could go grab an international number if you needed to as well. But for this exercise, I'm just going to grab one number. I'm going to claim the phone number. And congratulations, I now own that number. So now, if I want to go back home and go to users, you can see Jason only has one number. But in just a matter of seconds, I can go into his account, click on voice basic settings, and that new number that I just selected is right here. So I can just grab that number, hit save, and now Jason has that new number as well as his existing number. It's very easy. And when you look at using Microsoft Teams, getting a new DID can take you 3 to 10 days, whereas I just did it in 30 seconds. I think it's a great feature, and 8x8 has done a phenomenal job of making it easy to do. Now, I do want to show you something with Jive, who is owned by LogMeIn. They have a phenomenal dial plans editor. So you can see I've got one built here. I did this in about 20 minutes. Okay, so now we're in here. You can see what I built in about 20 minutes. So you've got an internal extension. You're going to assign a DID to this. So when a call comes in, it's going to hit an auto attendant. You can choose the audio clip that you want. Any audio clip that I've created for this account is right here. And so I'm going to choose open greeting. Now you can see that caller's got 2 options. But on an invalid option, I'm going to play a sound clip that says, you've chosen an invalid option, please try again. But as you can see, I don't have it going anywhere. And so it's as simple as just dragging and dropping it back to the auto attendant and allowing them to choose another option. It's that easy. It's very visual, very easy to use. And I think they've done a great job with this as well. A couple other things I want to show you is with DialPad. I think, again, another unique feature to DialPad is they have the capability of transcribing every call. This is part of their platform. It's not an add-on license. So you can see I had a call with Jason, And if I want to view the summary, I can go in there and see that there's some interesting questions, some action items. So now instead of scrolling through the entire conversation, I can just click on interesting questions and see what was asked. I think this is useful if you've had a call with somebody, you know you were asked a question, but you didn't write it down and you can't remember. You can now go back and take a look into the conversation and really get an understanding of what was asked or maybe what the action item was. So, in this one, for instance, it's, can we speak to 3 or 4 vendors? So, this is a great tool that Dialpad has offered, and I believe might be the only platform that offers this. And lastly, I just wanted to show you RingCentral's platform. I think this is great because I do have that all-inclusive single number reach. So from my desktop application here, you can see all my calls. This being an external call, I have the capability to SMS them back. I can call them, I can block the call, or I can delete it. If it's an internal call like Jason here, I don't have the ability to block. So only on outbound or on external calls can I block that caller. Same thing with voicemails. You can see all my voicemails. And again, I have all of the capabilities here as well. And then texting, this is SMS. So these are text messages to somebody outside of C3. And I can, again, go in here and I can call and delete as well. I can start text messaging from here and create a new text message. Yeah, go ahead, Matthew.
And something I like about this is, if you need to communicate to the rest of the world through text, I know a lot of organizations don't like to allow employees to use their own personal devices. So that means essentially the organization doesn't own that information if it's on that person's cellular device. So this is a way to text to the outside world and for you to retain that. So I've seen this used oftentimes for collections, for just working with end customers. So we think this is an awfully cool tool, and I think you've said in the past too. You're always surprised by the number of people that text your work phone, because everyone doesn't even think about it. They're texting back and forth, and this gives you that ability to send and receive those.
Absolutely. I find it to be a phenomenal tool to be able to communicate not only with our customers, but with our vendors as well. So being able to have this on my desktop and not on my cell phone, strictly to my cell phone, makes it very much more useful for me on a daily basis. Faxing. So every user with RingCentral gets the ability to e-fax as well. So you can see I've got a fax in here, and simply clicking on this button, I can view it. And just like with Chrome, it's going to give you the option to download and save it. But just by viewing it, I can see now what my fax is. It's got a cover letter and obviously a return label. I can also block that caller and then delete the text or the fax right from here. And lastly, same thing for recordings. As an end user, you have the capability of recording all your calls or any call on demand. And then again, block calls or delete or call back from here as well. Very cool. So guys, thank you for the demonstrations. We're gonna move it over to questions here, but I do want to let you guys know that we appreciate your time today. If you are looking at a new platform in the next 6, 12, 18 months, please reach out to us. We do this 20 times a day. I love having these conversations. We have a broad range of knowledge that we'd love to share with you. So don't go out and recreate the wheel. Let's make sure that you get in touch with us and let us really help understand what your requirements are and pair you with the best vendor out there for you. I'm gonna hand it back off to Taylor.
Awesome. Thanks, Joe. Joe, Matthew, thank you guys so much. You guys did great. So we definitely had a lot of questions come through, so I'm just going to kick it off. So Joe, I'm going to toss this one over to you first. So who would you say are the top 2 or 3 UCaaS vendors that have integrated into Microsoft Teams?
Yeah, that's a good one. Like I said earlier, everyone's trying to do that. Definitely have seen RingCentral, 8x8, and Fuse probably lead the charge in that in that respect. I think they're all waiting just for Microsoft to release their APIs fully. But once Microsoft does that, you're going to see most of these vendors really move forward with that integration. But yeah, for right now, those three, RingCentral, 8x8, and Fuse are probably leading the charge.
And I'll even jump in for a quick moment too. And I hate to get technical, but sometimes it kind of depends on what your version of integration means. So direct routing partner versus someone like a RingCentral who is integrating with them on a slightly different basis as well.
Awesome. And the next question, I'll open it up to either of you. Do most vendors have their own soft phone solution for cell phones?
Yes.
Yeah, they do, and those are there's pretty wide variety of solutions out there. But I would say, geez, I'd say at least 80 or 90% of them do. All the ones that have a fairly mature organization and product do. One thing that I find very interesting, specifically when it comes to that, is some organizations that offer cell phones to employees have found that the soft phone of their UCaaS can actually replace that phone, and they can actually look to reduce their expenditures there. So Joe, any other additional thoughts on that one?
Yeah, so everything I showed you in that RingCentral desktop application is the same on the mobile app. So think about being on your mobile app and being able to send or receive a fax or SMS, or obviously take video calls, block callers. As an administrator of your platform from the mobile app, you have the ability to administer your platform as well. So from your cell phone, you can go in and reset passwords, create accounts, order devices. So having that capability at your fingertips is a great addition. Not having to remote in or even log into a web portal, you can do it right from your cell phone. It's a great tool.
Awesome. And since we're on the discussion of what you just demonstrated, one question was, does RingCentral allow for some sort of analog conversion device for paging systems?
Absolutely, and most of them do. So an analog device would be handled with an ATA, analog terminal adapter, and essentially it's registered as a limited device, and then from that point on, it's going to communicate with that overhead paging or any other analog device that just needs a dial tone. Yep, absolutely.
Great. And then a few other ones. We have about 4 or 5 more questions. So can Teams provide E911 functionality?
They can, yes. So when you look at E911, most vendors are going to be very static. So you're going to put a phone on the desk, you're going to set that location, and as long as it doesn't move, you're fine. And Teams does that. Where you need to look at beyond that is notifying somebody on site of that E911 call. And that's a capability that maybe Microsoft Teams is lacking in right now, but you have to not only know that somebody called up, you have to alert somebody on site or within your organization that that call was made. So that is definitely something to keep in consideration as well. And then on top of that, what we're seeing is a lot of vendors are learning or leaning towards having the capability of dynamically updating that address. So when you unplug a phone and move it to a new location, that phone will not work until the E911 address has been updated and verified. So as an admin, if you've got people within your organization moving phones without notifying the IT department, this is a great way to make sure that your E911 database stays accurate. And on top of that, you think about everybody that's moving around on a laptop. If they happen to make a call using that desktop application from their laptop, how are you going to manage that as well? So keep that in mind. A lot of vendors are working towards being able to manage those mobile users as well. And then lastly, I do want to point out on a mobile device using that soft client, every vendor will default back to your cellular connection to make that E911 call, and then your geolocation will be used, or GPS would be used for that.
I want to jump in. I'm going to do a quick little commercial for C3. There is so much to know just about E911 when it comes to all these platforms that doing the homework yourself, your eyes will bleed, I mean, we have done all this homework, and there is a lot to be done, and there's a lot to take into consideration with all the regulations out there. So I'm sure you and your legal staff want to know what the capabilities and the ramifications for failing to provide a good E911 solution for your employees. So we've had customers engage C3 for nothing more than just E911 help. So it's definitely something that, it's one of those conversations that no one really wants to have, because it's not something that's overly sexy, but it's something that, it's a conversation that has to be had.
Yeah, Matthew, and I'll tell you, when you look at the state laws that you have to comply with, the federal laws you have to comply with, these are laws that are ambiguous. And we've spent a lot of time dissecting those and really understanding what the requirements are and being able to advise our customers on how they should move forward.